Hello, Sloss Tech. How's everyone doing? Awesome. So before we start, just want to say thank you to the team at Tech Birmingham and Telegraph for inviting us, and I'm so excited for this conversation for many reasons. I'm thrilled to share the stage today with Kai Frazier, the CEO of Kai XR. She's an amazing entrepreneur, leader, and friend. And before we dive deep with Kai, I wanted to share a brief background about our organization, the Kapor Foundation. Our mission is to create a more equitable technology ecosystem that addresses longstanding racial inequality, that creates economic opportunity, that tackles critical societal issues, and reflects the power and perspectives of communities of color. We conduct research, we make strategic grants, we support policy change, and we invest in entrepreneurs like Kai and fund managers. I also wanted to shout out my amazing colleague, Lily Anavakpuri, in the front row here, who is the co-managing partner of Kapor Capital and just closed a $126 million fund. Woohoo! So our work is guided by the Leaky Tech Pipeline Framework, which articulates the biases and barriers that happen across the tech ecosystem, from K-12 education all the way through venture capital and entrepreneurship. And my own background is in education, and specifically the study of inequality in education, and therefore a major passion of the work at the foundation. And we could not be more thrilled to combine two of our strategies, computer science education, closing education equity gaps, and investing. And so could not be more thrilled to be an investor in Kai and her company, Kai XR. So this session today, we're going to talk a little bit about her journey as a tech entrepreneur and how ed tech companies like Kai XR can play a critical role in enhancing equity in education and building thriving tech ecosystems like you all are working to build here in Birmingham. Welcome to Kai.
It's such an honor to be here. I was telling Allison earlier, this is my first time sharing a stage with Allison, and we've worked together for so many years. And then to give some more context, back in February 2023, I had the honor of hosting a small delegation from Ed Farm to Oakland, where I got to show them where I live, how entrepreneurship is there. And the first stop we did is we went to the Kapor Center. We met Frida Kapor, we met Allison. The next week I was on a plane and I did a 4-month stint in Birmingham to really grow the platform Kai XR within Ed Farm and with Birmingham City Schools. And now 6 months later, I get to really bridge that gap and bring my main support in Oakland with the communities in Birmingham that have been such a support over the last couple of months. So just really happy to have this moment.
Yes, round of applause. Thank you. So Kai, can you tell us about your background in education and what inspired you to become an entrepreneur?
Sure, I'm very open. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I never wanted to have a company, none of this. My background is being a teacher. I've been in education for about 20 years now, aging myself. And in my classroom, I taught, the last classroom I was in Northern Virginia, about 20 minutes from Washington, D.C. And in my classroom, I had two big challenges. One, my school didn't have a lot of technology. When you think about when I went to school, we had a computer lab, but when we went to laptops, we didn't have a computer lab anymore. So that means that we may have our laptops on a laptop cart. You sign them out. If I'm lucky, I may get that laptop cart once a month, twice a month, and then I'm assuming that they're going to come to me charged with the keys working. So usually we did not have a lot of technology in our classrooms. So my school had a bring your own device policy. That meant for my 8th graders that I taught, they had to bring their own smartphones to school. And that's how we use technology. In addition to that, I live, like I said, 20 minutes outside of Washington, D.C., where all of the free federal museums are. So think about the Smithsonian's all on the block. And because my school could not afford the money for the buses to take us to the free federal museums, we did not get to go. Some stats about that is when kids go on field trips, they're actually 95% more likely to graduate from high school. A lot of my students had challenging backgrounds in teaching world history and U.S. history. To have resources like that in our backyard and not being able to use them, it felt personal. So it was one of those realizations that proximity did not mean access for me and my students. So I wanted to see a way if I could bridge that gap. How could I infuse technology that they had, their smartphones, and how could I let them explore the world around them if we couldn't get on field trips? So I had the idea of a virtual field trip. I had seen some, after I left teaching in classrooms, I went to work at those museums, and I thought I was going to get in there and figure it all out. What I learned was a lot of the museum educators had never stepped foot in the classroom. So it was a little bit worse than I thought it was. So I had seen some VR at the museums before, and my thought was the VR that I'm seeing, it's mobile VR, where you have a cardboard headset or a plastic headset, you put your phone inside of it, and you're kind of like looking at your phone through your headset, but that was pretty much a entry-level VR experience. So I wanted to see, was there a way where we could film the museums and then bring it back to our students, wherever they may be, maybe make it standards aligned, that's always great, and then see if we can have virtual field trips that the kids would love to use that solve for the field trips and the technology. 5 years later, that idea has evolved into a full company, KaiXR, where we are a learning platform where kids get to use metaverse technologies in their classroom. So they do virtual field trips, they do metaverse maker spaces, and what that may look like is if I'm a teacher teaching a solar system lesson, I can take my students on a virtual field trip through the solar system, then they will actually build a 3D metaverse model of it or a drag and drop maker space, they get a grade, it goes back, so the kids are using in-demand technologies at the earliest ages, not just science or math classes, but I'll stop there.
Thank you, Kai. Let me pull up my notes here, sorry. So, according to the most recent data, for those who know me, know I love to throw stats in here. Just 1% of $288 billion in venture investment has gone to Black founders. So this translates to, in 2022, just 200 Black-founded companies receiving venture capital. Can you talk a little bit about what's it like to be a tech entrepreneur and your journey as a Black woman in tech and starting a company?
Yeah, I was thinking about how to answer this question, and it's just laughably hard. It's one of those things that's so hard, if you really think about it, you'll get super angry. So when I first started, to start my company, I knew it was going to cost money, and I didn't have money. So I decided that I was going to bet on myself, and I sold my house, my car, and everything I owned, and I moved across the country from DC to Oakland, California, so I could be adjacent to Silicon Valley and learn all that I could on the ground. I didn't know what venture capital was. I didn't even know, I've heard people mention it in some of the conversations. I had an LLC. I didn't know I needed a Delaware C Corp for a lot of these things. I was super green to this. So where I moved, I actually moved a couple blocks down the street from the Kapor Center, and that was my first introduction to hearing what venture capital was, different resources. So I'm, as challenging as it was, which I'll talk about, it could have been so much more challenging if I didn't have the grace of God to put me right down the street from a powerhouse of resources. When I did move there, the statistic was for Black women to raise money. Out of all the venture dollars that went out that year in 2018, the amount that went to Black women was 0.0006% went to Black women. So we were already, or I was already going into this knowing that, it was going to be highly improbable that we would be able to raise money. And having said that, now what? So it was a lot of creativity on the ground. Being in Silicon Valley, I would sneak into conferences from, Stanford to from Oakland, anywhere I could find a conference about VR, venture capital. I would go to different meetup groups. I would go to events at the Kapor Center. For me, I said, if I sold all this stuff, I'm gonna make it work. So I made sure that I was very serious about showing up fully every single day through the hardships of what it's like to even still be standing and having a company.
Can you talk a little bit more about, as a startup founder, what's been most helpful to you, and what types of supports do you think founders like you need to launch and grow companies?
Yeah, we need lots of support. We need resources. So not to keep plugging the Kapor Center, but for me, I remember I was talking to one of my advisors, and I was like, man, I got like $30 in my account. I don't know how I'm going to keep on going. I can't eat. It's really bad. And he told me, he was like, well, if you want some money, you got to pitch. And I was like, I don't want to go on a stage and pitch. What are you talking about? And he was like, well, how hungry are you? So I had to go and pitch. So my very first pitch competition was in collaboration with Black Girl Ventures and the Kapor Center. And for me, I think I was very nervous about it, but then I realized pitching was like teaching. Could I just run through these words, in 3 minutes on the clock and beat the clock? And so I still, to this day, I have not lost a pitch competition, and I got to win it first with the Kapor Center. From there, thank you. And that's where we got a lot of early money from. The thing about Black founders is you're pitching for pennies a lot. So 5,000 here, 30,000 here, 20,000 here, just just going up and pitching. My rule is if I have to get on the plane to pitch, I'm not going home with no money, so I've got to win this pitch competition. So pitching that one gave me the entry point to being selected for the Kapor Center's Accelerator. So that was my first time being incubated with other diverse founders that were solving social impact problems. So that was very helpful. And then even that was my first time meeting and talking with venture capitalists. I don't know if you remember Lily. I met with Lily, and she was the first one that told me this concept of recurring revenue. I never even knew what that word was. I'm like, why do they like my business model? Because it wasn't recurring, it was risky. So I really had to, but before then, when I was talking to venture capitalists, they were playing me. They were looking at me like I was stupid in these meetings. So the Kapor Center was the first time people treated me with respect at these meetings. After I did that, even when I was trying to figure out where the money will go, the thing that I've learned in this journey is that it's very cyclical. So you may see somebody who has a top startup one day, they will go under the next day and be a VC the next day, right? So all of these connections really matter. So in my cohort, the person that sat next to me, he had a company called Zenny. His company went under, and he was one of my first investors. He put in $10,000 to KaiXR. He's now raising a $30 million fund. Then the person next to me, the top company in that accelerator, in my opinion, was this company called Literator. They're an edtech company, and I saw them go under, and then they put the money into KaiXR too. So on my left and my right, because they saw how hard I hustled, my cohort members invested in me. And they're putting in big dollars at this point. So a lot of the early resources I got just from being down the street and just making sure I was showing up fully every single day.
So obviously a really inspiring journey, and I think the thing that drives both Kai, myself, my colleagues, is like, how do we create more Kais? How do we ensure that we can multiply both the brilliance, the experiences, and invest in founders that can actually have some positive social impact in the world? So we wanted to shift to talk about the other topic that we were tasked with addressing today, about education. So we know that there are pervasive gaps in education, in access and opportunity. Many of those gaps have been accelerated by the pandemic. Students still lack equitable access to high quality education. Kai just talked about lack of access to technology in classrooms. That's still an ongoing challenge. Test scores in math and reading have declined for the first time in 20 years. And just 53% of schools across the country offer students any opportunity to take a computer science course. So what do you see as you're doing work across the country? What do you see as some of the biggest challenges in education? And how might EdTech solutions solve some of them?
Sure. So for me, my company, we really specialize in metaverse technology. So think VR headsets, VR, AR, XR, and all those cool things. So when you even think about these technologies, well, let me frame it like this. So you can think about a kid going through school, never seeing this technology. Let's say it's a kid in Birmingham. Let's say they want to go to Morehouse College. They've never seen these technologies. When they get to Morehouse is actually teaching courses in the metaverse for VR headsets. So what does that mean for a kid who's never seen any of this stuff? They studied really hard to get into that school, and they get there and they don't know what's happening. That's what we see a lot with the students. Nobody's introducing these in-demand technologies, and nor are they doing it at an early age. So when we go into in-demand technologies, for me, one of the biggest issues first are devices. When I hear schools they have one-to-one devices, I mean, that's the biggest flex for me. I did not have that. So just getting a device in somebody's hand is a big deal. And then after you have the device, it's a connectivity issue. So without good Wi-Fi connection, that device is a brick. And we see a lot of brick devices that people don't like to discuss. Once we have that, it comes down to the content. A lot of the content is not very engaging for students. It doesn't reflect their worlds, their lives. So we see kids using some of these new edtech products, and it just isn't just not piquing their interest. For KaiXR, some of the ways that we built our technology is we made very intentional tech choices, which for that, it makes it so we can run on the places where tech doesn't normally go. For example, if you're getting into VR technology, it's a pretty hefty technology, right? So you need like a gaming laptop that may cost $2,500, $3,000 like that. You need really strong graphic cards. So we actually made KaiXR so it ran so lightweight it could run on a smartphone. So that means that maybe you can't go and build blocks and blocks in the metaverse world, but you can go ahead and start your entry point into building and build for a good time, but it runs on the technology that we see in a lot of classrooms, maybe an iPad. KaiXR is device agnostic, and that's because of my own experience in the classroom. So we run on a smartphone to a VR headset. So I think that if more people took time to be in the classroom and saw what it was really like, they would kind of change the way they were building the tech. And not making those changes, we're really damning these students. And people always ask me, why would I ever sell everything I had to build a company when I don't even code? I tell people, I'm a non-technical founder, so I don't even code. And I do that because if I didn't do it, if more teachers don't step up and start really taking the task to building these new technologies, there is no help coming right now. So I'm really clear about that. Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit more? I've heard some of these stories. I'm sure we have even more stories to share about what you've done here in Birmingham in collaboration with EdFarm and other partners.
Yeah, so I've had a great time working with the educators at EdFarm. I came to Birmingham for my first time on Juneteenth last year for the Future of Learning Summit that EdFarm puts together, and I was keynoting, and as I keynoted, I looked in the audience, and it was like 200 super engaged teachers all excited about tech. That never happens. So I was like, okay, what is this? I was talking to Wayman. I said, Wayman, I got to figure out how to get the tech in front of these teachers because, and I'm saying this as a teacher, teaching teachers is a little bit harder than teaching students because we are so used to using some more traditional, we've always done it this way, technologies, if you will. So sometimes even, I'm saying this as a teacher because I really had a hard time too transitioning, but maybe using Google Suites is challenging, right? And we're trying to get them to use metaverse technologies. So I got to work alongside EdFarm to see how they're really rethinking the culture in the classrooms and really supporting, partnering, and championing educators. So one of the biggest learnings that I got from working with EdFarm is as a teacher, when you're doing new technology, you need a professional development to learn these new skills. EdFarm is the one that showed me that they just show up to the classroom with the teachers and support them side by side. That alone helped us grow our platform beyond our wildest dreams. It made it sticky because teachers didn't feel afraid. They had a partner with them. So that was huge. We got to champion the teachers. We got to, before I came to work with EdFarm, I thought that our platform worked for middle school students. EdFarm took the platform to I3 Academy, and they had kindergartners using KaiXR. Blew my mind of just what students could do and why it's so important to introduce the technologies to them at the earliest age, which I couldn't tell who asked the question earlier, but somebody in the earlier session said, if we want to really have a tech ecosystem in Birmingham, what has to happen and why are we not investing in digital literacy for the youngest learners? That's one of the huge things that we saw of EdFarm is they're really helping the youngest learners make a culture of digital literacy and not just in science and math classes as well. So I could ramble all day about EdFarm, but really excited to have that touch point into Birmingham City Schools to learn from the educators. We did about 4 months using KaiXR at Birmingham City Schools. By the time I left Birmingham to go back to Oakland in June, I got invited to a celebration of learning from the student fellows of EdFarm, and I was basically sitting in a VR film festival where students were making, they had a metaverse music video, they had VR tours they were doing, and they did it all on their own. So just really showing that the kids, the teachers, the students, they're hungry for innovation, they're hungry for engaging platforms, and they just need a spark. And from there, I mean, they produced the music in their EdFarm spaces, they made their own dances, they put it on the VR headset, and that was just from 3 months of having a touch point to metaverse technologies.
And if I could add just one other shameless plug for the importance of computer science education, we see these two things working in parallel, right? So there's the early exposure to digital literacies, to technologies, but then how do we ensure that all students have the opportunity to get on a computer science education pathway? So that includes like introductory courses, more advanced courses, courses that incorporate things like tech ethics. Shout out to my colleague Shana White in the audience who's leading some of that work. So some of the work that we're doing across the country and in our 3 ecosystem cities of Detroit, Atlanta, and Oakland are really working with school districts to take a more comprehensive approach to building out equitable computer science pathways. So that leads me to my closing questions, and then we'll have an opportunity for the audience to ask Kai some questions as well. What opportunities do you see for Birmingham to build an inclusive and impactful tech ecosystem? And what are some of the critical components of that from your perspective as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I firmly believe in the power of Birmingham. I've had an amazing 4 months to the point that I'm actually returning for a full year next year, just to work alongside of the teachers and students. Yeah, you know, I can't say enough great things about being here, and really just helping bring a lot of the knowledge that I've learned from going through it, being an entrepreneur in the Bay. So one of the biggest things that, you know, entrepreneurship is not in a vacuum. It's all community. So first, a huge shout out I want to do is Dr. Starks over there. She took me to, yes, shout out to Dr. Starks. She was the first one that took me to a Black female founders group where I got to see other people in the community that looked just like me. It was almost like therapy, and to know that I wasn't by myself and I had people to talk to. As far as other resources, you know, this is an EdTech focused panel, so I will talk a bit about what does it take to really support a school in a school district. The kiss of death in EdTech is you don't get districts. You cannot get into a district. It's very challenging. And then even if you are blessed enough to grow and scale into a school district, most EdTech companies don't make it over $10 million in ARR for revenue. So I was so fortunate to work with EdTech to understand what it means to talk and work with school board members, superintendents, teachers, all these things on the floor to take a big risk, a big role into cultivating those relationships to really grow and scale a platform and a product. So I can't say enough good things about that. I always tell Wayman, I've been in lots of different accelerators. Nobody ever helped me on how to talk to schools. And that for an EdTech founder, we have to go talk to schools. So for me, even as a classroom teacher, I had no experience talking to an admin at an admin level. So I can't stress enough just how challenging for most, I have a lot of different EdTech founder friends, they never make it to the stage that my company is. And when I talked to Wayman, I said, I think you have a really great opportunity with having so many amazing teachers that are willing to give product feedback, help improve products. I don't think I could have found that anywhere else, and I'm very thankful for the resources I found in education in Birmingham. In addition to that, you know, we always need money. This is a funding issue, especially for people of color. It's very different. It's very hard to find those pockets of money. And then a lot of our work is supported by foundations. So, for example, we support the juvenile detention centers of Houston, Texas, Harris County. That's sponsored by T-Mobile. So one of the things that we always need in building tech ecosystems is support from the corporations and the foundations who really do support a lot of the programming. So community is a big part. I'm looking forward to meeting more entrepreneurs here, and especially when I come back, that's a huge thing. And just sharing resources and learning from each other.
Awesome. So last question for you, Kai, before we kick it over to the audience. Do you have a call to action? So we have a diverse audience, folks from different backgrounds that play different roles in the ecosystem here as well as across the country. What would be your call to action?
Yeah, this is a hard question when we were talking about it. So for me, I would just kind of iterate on what I just said. This does not happen in a vacuum. So I know a lot of people, they've talked to me about ideas they have for companies, but if only they had this, if only we had this. I feel very strongly that everything that we need in Birmingham and beyond we already have. It's just getting really strategic on how we're working together. Everybody has a different role to play. Everybody can make an introduction. Everybody can be an advocate. And I tell people, even if you have an idea and you don't know where to start, I heard it said earlier, you just start. People would tell me like, oh, I want to work in tech. And I'm like, you already work in tech, just say it. You know, so little things like that and coming together, I think people are waiting for that tap that you can do it. You're already doing it. And even I want to make a stronger call to action for my educators, if I have any. I think it's very unique that in a school you have mathematicians and historians and chemists and biologists, you have all these people, and we're not making anything, right? We have such long experience from being very close to our students and these education systems. So I'm really looking forward to people who are in their fields, the subject matter experts. Even if you don't have a tech background, we need you. We really, and it's dire. We need everybody to step up wherever they are and know that you have a place here, you have a place in tech and beyond, and you don't have to do it by yourself. You can find a partner, you can work together, and we're waiting for these moments to happen. So, and I'm always here as a resource, and just really excited to continue the work in Birmingham and make sure from coast to coast all the resources continue to grow.
Awesome. Can we give Kai another round of applause? Thank you so much for sharing your journey, your ideas, and for being an inspiration to so many of us. So we have time for questions. Any questions for Kai about her journey as an entrepreneur? Questions about how we might build a more inclusive, equitable education and tech ecosystem?
Hello, Kai.
Hi.
My question is, would you please expound upon us on how you were able to win every pitch competition you did? It's pretty impressive.
Absolutely. I could talk all day about this. So first of all, I was told that you don't practice until it's perfect. You practice until you can't mess up. So when I tell you you're practicing in the shower, you're practicing as I walk, you practice every second. Another thing is I hate sitting through pitch competitions and people, I feel like if you go over the time and they cut you off, you've wasted everybody's time. So you should know what 3 minutes sounds like. So they give you 3 minutes, 5 minutes, you should be practicing that you know. We practice with a timer. So you know, like when I get to my last sentence, I know in 5 more seconds, I'm gonna hear that timer. That alone is a huge game changer in pitching. And for me personally, before COVID, to go to a pitch competition, I had to save my money. I had to go to travel someplace and I had to pitch. That may cost me $3,000. I'm recouping that money, So for me, it was numbers. Yeah, it's a numbers game. So I make sure that, if you've ever seen me pitch, I am in the corner talking to myself up until it's time for me to pitch. And if the stage may change, I just step over and I pitch. But I've been running that same thing over and over again. I think people don't understand, this is running information. You're pitching, so it's a big, serious deal. So, and then it's just telling a story. I think a lot of people, they just pitch and they're not really great storytellers. So just, working with other people, hearing other pitches, seeing what you like, and then, crafting your story from there. So, but like I said, if anybody wants to talk pitching and story, I can definitely, that's one of my favorite combos to talk about. Hey, Destiny.
Hey. So this was an amazing panel, and I, along with some other people here, are very curious of where you see KayXR in the next 10 years.
Well, I'm going to answer that, but Destiny first, can you tell them who you are and what you're studying?
I'm Destiny Patton, and I'm studying imaging science at Rochester Institute of Technology.
Who's your mentor that helped you?
Dr. Starks of Stream Innovation. She's sitting right there.
True. Yeah. So first, shout out to Destiny. I'm a true teacher. I'm like, no, you tell them what you're doing. You're doing some great things too. So your question is, where do I see KayXR going in the next 10 years and stuff like that? For me, I think about KayXR being a learning platform where kids can use it at all subject areas, and we incorporate more technologies. We're doing metaverse technologies now. I can't wait to incorporate whatever is next, from AI to AR to, I don't know. That's the thing about technology. We never know where it's going, but I hope, I remind people that I didn't love VR. I just saw that when kids put a headset on, they came out sounding like a Wikipedia page. And I was like, what is this technology that's really giving them this head start like this? And that's why I dove into VR. So I hope that I can keep an eye on the pulse of what's really engaging students, how to translate it into the platform. And I hope that just like students who love Snapchat, but they don't realize they have AR skills and they can have a career in AR, I hope that kids, by using KayXR as early as kindergarten, that they're learning the 21st century skills that are needed, from innovation and creativity and problem solving and critical thinking, and they can take those skills and apply to any technology and be prepared for the future. So at KayXR, we say we're giving kids a head start for the future.
Love it.
Thank you for the question, Destiny.
First off, I want to say thanks for the great dialogue and conversation. So just for background, I'm program manager for Prosper Health Tech. So I kind of know about some of the bureaucracy and red tape that you face, because we see it in healthcare as well. But I want to know, how did you actually break in when it comes to dealing with administration? Did you have to go through the teachers? What has been your main path to kind of that success that you've had so far?
Yeah, so I guess it's a tech conference. I can talk like tech stuff. I try to be, education and tech is so different, but Okay, so I always consider my health folks my buddies because we're both struggling together because you know how the bureaucracy is. So yeah, so first that acknowledgement that is really hard. When you get into a lot of these sales, everybody has a role to play. Our teachers are our advocates. They're the ones that get very excited about KaiXR. They tell their admins. Without that teacher excitement, it does not go to admin. So when you're trying to help advanced conversations with administration, it makes it a lot easier. People really would be upset if you took the product away from them. So really getting that initial group of advocates from there. Then, our end users are our students. So the students, one of the things that really blew my mind also in Birmingham was that our students were so excited about using KaiXR, they were doing it at home. So they're basically doing homework at home. So now we have the parent engaged. So now the parent is also an advocate as well. As for me, building digital literacy, I think it's a trifecta of the parent, teacher, and student. So by doing that, now we have the trifecta going. So when we have parents talking to teachers and admins about what is this thing that they're using that the kids are really excited, my child's excited to learn, and teachers are saying, well, are you going to renew for the next year? We need this in our classroom. Now that makes my conversations so much easier with admins. And I love to be in communities. So I've got to work and learn from different members of the education system in Birmingham, in Montgomery, and the Georgia area, just making sure I'm present on the ground. I visit schools all the time. I talk to them about entrepreneurship. The reason why the company is KaiXR is because students have a hard time understanding people make companies. So I'll talk to them about Fortnite, Snapchat, and they'll be like, oh, that's cool, who made it? I'll tell them about KaiXR, and they'll be like, okay, well, who made it? And I'm talking directly to them. So I make sure that I'm in the communities, encouraging students, teachers, admins, and just learning from them. I wish there was an easier answer. I think the easier answer is money. I don't got money though. So I make sure that I'm doing every possible thing that I can do to make sure that I'm making real, genuine connections. I'm not a very transactional person, so if I'm really talking to you, I love to talk to you. And just learning from the community in which I wish to serve and help.
Thank you.
No problem.
Hi, thank you so much for this conversation. It's been very enlightening for me. And so just for my background, I'm an artist and I'm very passionate about teaching other people to tap into their inner creativity. And as a non-tech artist, how would I go about merging technology with art to help students learn?
Yeah, I just want to stress they need you. For a lot of these things, the technology, it's coding, but what are you coding? So I find a lot of, when I first started this, people love to do metaverse stuff, but they didn't have a story, they didn't have art, it was missing a soul. So I would say for a lot of our students, they don't think they have a role in this because they're not highly technical or they're not highly technical yet. I have kids in Birmingham City Schools. They joke on me all the time because I can't code, and they're like, "You didn't make it." So just really, stressing that even we may have a student may have something they drew, and then we have them created in our metaverse makerspace, right? So just something as simple as that. How do they translate their art into tech? And then a lot of times, a lot of this is problem solving. So I don't prescribe how to do it. I tell them, here's the art, what do you want to make? And they always blow my mind. I think one of the coolest things from startup life is you always have an idea of how your customers are going to use the product, and then you give it to them, and they're like, nah. So I think for a lot of the art stuff, you should definitely ask them what they want to create with it. And then another shameless Oakland plug, we have a great colleague, Damian McDuffie. His company is Black Terminus AR, and he's going through his community and figuring out how to bring art and archives alive from the community through using augmented reality. So check him out too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Okay, hello. Thank you. Again, this was very informative. And I'm not an educator personally, but my sister is. And I listen to her stories all the time. And I'm really grateful for what you educators do and just the impact that you have. So my question is, I'm gonna do my best to kind of put this in one question, but when kind of designing or implementing the metaverse technology, have you been able to kind of tailor this to students with different like learning abilities, like those with maybe ADHD, or students with maybe physical disabilities?
Yeah, you did a good job with that question. So yes, and it's been a lot of learning from those students. So I had a classroom at Southampton K-8, and we had some students that were in exceptional education, if you will, and the teacher thought that they weren't going to be able to use the metaverse platforms. We found with extra time and working in groups, they actually did the best out of the whole class. We did not expect that. I've had students that I've worked with that maybe have cerebral palsy, and we'll put the VR headset to their face and kind of spin them around the chair, and the teachers will be like, oh my God, their faces, I've never seen their face light up and smile like this. So I think a lot of times we have not included those students in a lot of these technologies, and by building the way that we have built to make it very simple, I'm a firm believer that when we build for the least of us, everybody wins. It takes so many folks off the sidelines. So I'm looking forward to more students, showing us how they are, receiving the platform. And then, at this point, when there's a part of the startup where you're just like building your ideas, and you hit a next side where now you're listening to customers and improving the platform based on customers. So I'm at the point where I'm looking forward to seeing all that they will teach me and figure out how we can best put that input and that feedback into the product. Yeah, thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you for answering.
No problem.
Hello.
Hi.
I am a founder of a mobile mental health spa for students in underserved communities, and I'm actually working on just developing using virtual reality as a therapy, a form of therapy for students dealing with anxiety, and just wondering, as I finished Voltage, which is incubator at Innovation Depot, and just trying my best to figure out my next steps in finding the best, ed tech or accelerators that do you have any recommendations or you can refer?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna tell you, I feel, well, let me pick my words carefully. Every accelerator offers something a little bit different. I think the accelerator we deserve to really address some of the questions we have, I'm waiting for it to still be created, especially from a lot of people who have been through these programs and we're coming out missing some substance. But what I will tell you is I think a cheat code is looked at some companies who are already doing it and see what you can learn from them and accelerate yourself, girl. So look at Helium VR is one, and I think Trippy VR, they're two mental health VR companies, and they have their business model there. They have all this stuff. Just look at, see what they're doing, and see what you can take. And I think that may be a great accelerator. So check it out. And I think we're at time now.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to our session. Thank you for engaging with us, and a huge thank you to Kai for her amazing work.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you, everyone.